Have you ever said something to someone but then later on thought, why did I share that? That feeling of oversharing that could lead to you wanting to delete a message and wanting to disappear and wanting to avoid the thought of everything all at once. And that was probably not because what you shared was untrue, but because it was so very true. And that vulnerability of sharing it left something open in you in which you just didn't feel held. And that then could lead to having the feeling of shame or fear. But the deeper question is, but why is that actually? That being so very truthful, honest, and authentically in communication, that can feel like shame. Because is there then a layer that perhaps doesn't want to be seen for the truth that we carry? We are going to answer under this new moon in Gemini. Welcome to Starline Activations episode 7. My name is Anke. I'm an astrologer, I'm a mystic, and above all, I'm a mother. And last week, I officially opened the temple doors to the 13th temple. It feels like it has always existed because within me it has, but I haven't actually shared much about it outwardly. So let me do that under this Gemini New Moon. The 13th temple is a place where I work with intuitive souls, either through journeys together, gate 1, 2, and 3, truly bringing you back to who you are as a soul, awakening your soul memory, or through personal guidance in the form of one-to-one sessions, through astrology, Akashic records, or light language. And we have also the temple space within the 13th temple, which is a community where we meet twice a month under the new moon and the full moon. So let's start with this episode of today. Let's really go into the energy of the new moon in Gemini. So whenever we have a new moon, the sun and moon, they meet up together in the sky. The father and the mother, the feminine and the masculine, yin and yang. They are holding hands together in the sky. They are recalibrating, they are merging, and therefore it can also be seen as a very fertile window for planting seeds for the cycle ahead. And where we focus our energy, that is where the seeds will grow. And the new moon is a very inward and reflective time. We really want to take time for ourselves. It is the time to really spend with our soul self, with our higher self, or just really with our voice that comes from within. That is also why, if you are being born just before the new moon, you are a very intuitive soul. You are a very intuitive person, and our inner voices are very active around this time of the month. They are helping and guiding us to direct where we should put that energy to plant those seeds. And at the end of this episode, I will go into the most important dates of the new moon in Gemini cycle. But I do already want to mention that wherever we are focusing our energy now, in Sagittarius season, December 8th to be specific, that is when we are having our full moon in Gemini, and we will see a huge illumination around whatever is going on now. Whatever intentions we are setting now are being illuminated at that time. And that is why I always like to leave myself a little note for the full moon in, for example, my phone or written, to reflect back on how that is actually showing up in my life by then. And especially under this Gemini new moon, we could leave ourselves a voice message, really using our voice and then listening back at that time. As this is a Gemini new moon, words, letters, notes, they are even more important. And the moon and the sun, they will meet up at 24 degrees of Gemini. And that is the third decan of Gemini. And it is very mature, wise Gemini energy. And this new moon itself is not making many aspects in the chart, yet there are very important signatures that flavor this new moon intensely. So let's go over that. Let's go over what is really happening in the sky at this moment. Because, for example, the new moon itself is sextiling Chiron in Aries at 29 degrees. Chiron is the very last degree. It is tuning in with the wounds around identity. Who am I? What am I really standing for the very last time before it is moving into Taurus at the end of June? And in sextiling to the new moon, there is this effortless gift of speaking about what used to hurt and what at times might still hurt, but is becoming very conscious now. And it might feel like you want to speak about it during these days of the new moon, that you want to share it. It might be where it was once hurting, but now you have gained so much knowledge about it that you are ready to share. And whatever that is, that really wants to come to the forefront now. So I'm not surprised if channeled messages will come through around this time, downloads, really these intuitive insights. And when I look at the energy and opportunities of a new moon chart, I always look at the ruler of the lunation, which is in this case Mercury. And Mercury is sitting in Cancer at 18 degrees, and it has a wide conjunction to Jupiter, meaning it is close in the sky to Jupiter, almost holding hands. Jupiter is at 24 degrees of Cancer. But at the same time, Jupiter and Mercury are creating this tension with Saturn in Aries in the form of a square. So what that means is that our mental body, the way we speak, the way we communicate, the way we think, it is learning, it is receiving expansion via Jupiter. It is giving us insight into the bigger picture, and it is giving us the ability to think outside of the box, have really big ideas where it can feel very personal and emotional, and it is very much connected to our memory as all of this is happening in Cancer. But on the other hand, Mercury is also receiving tension from Saturn that is asking the question of the bigger picture. Is this realistic? How much time is this going to take? Is it responsible to share those big ideas? So it is really pulling yourself in different directions. And Venus is very strong in the sky under this new moon. It just moved into Leo at 1 degree, and it is in opposition to Pluto, 5 degrees of Aquarius. And this is an opposition that is asking us under this new moon to rethink how we love, to rethink the depth of love, attraction, of how we magnetize. It wants us to go deeper and to really look at the transformative opportunity that is there. And this is not just for the new moon, but since a few days, Uranus, the planet of awakening, of freedom, of the future, at 2 degrees of Gemini, is in tension with both the north and the south node, the direction of our collective consciousness and where it wants to move in terms of evolution. And that is being challenged by Uranus. So that can lead to unexpected news, unexpected communication, unexpected thoughts, channeled messages again, insights that can just really come out of the blue that determine then our long-term faith, our destiny, our road that we want to take. And it can really feel like you're standing at a crossroad at this moment, and a crossroad that you did not see coming at all, like an opportunity that just arrived that changes everything. And speaking of evolution, the evolutions of our soul's journey, this new moon is aligning with the star system of Orion. In galactic astrology, we are connecting Orion, the star system Orion, to a star system of warriors, of a hub, of all these collective species coming together and all being in their unique versions, all having their unique voice, having to fight to share that voice. And that feels to me in complete alignment when I look at this chart of this new moon and the energy that it is telling me. It is all really coming back to showing your authentic voice, which might have felt like you had to fight for it to really have it now. And that right now is the moment to share. And wherever this new moon falls in your own chart, at 24 degrees of Gemini, the house is the area of life where this will show up. And the sign is how that will be expressed, where you are being asked to really speak up, to show up, to speak your truth, and don't withhold just because it can feel scary to say certain things out loud, and to not be afraid to overshare. It can feel slightly triggering with the sextile to 29 degrees of Chiron in Aries, and it can be something emotionally big with Mercury and Jupiter together in Cancer. And by truly speaking up, the way you are perceived, the way people relate to you might transform with Venus opposing Pluto. And then under the influence of Uranus squaring the nodes, it could really change your course. And it could also really change the way you thought that things would happen for you. But your soul had a different direction in mind. Under this new moon, our words are medicine. Words, our voice, they create sound. And sound carries frequency. And frequency attracts frequency. So in a way, everything Mercury related, the ruler of this lunation, what we speak, what we think, the words that we hold in too long, when we think that we overthink or overshare, all of that holds power and all of that holds frequency like spells. So when we hear sayings like, choose your words wisely, you are what you think, words can cut like a knife. And I'm sure that there are many more, but all of that, they carry so much more depth than we might think when they are being said in the moment. The mental body is working directly with the emotional body. Mercury in Cancer, as we speak, under this new moon, is working directly with the ethereal body, bringing in the frequency that we are carrying out, consciously or not, and therefore we do want to work with this consciously. And by doing so, we can then also attract that same frequency back to us. And how that relates to how I opened this episode with how we feel when we feel that we have overshared, that feeling of shame, that feeling of wanting to disappear. I would like to transmute this feeling because this feeling of oversharing can come from different actions, and not everything actually has to be avoided, because the first thing is that feeling is coming from speaking your truth completely and fully, so that when you reflect back on it later, you are feeling naked or you are feeling vulnerable, that you took up space to speak your truth completely, that you showed so much of yourself so openly that it made you want to hide afterwards. And why? Because most probably afterwards we fear that people will not recognize themselves in it, that they might judge us, that now they have seen something of us that makes us feel unsafe or ashamed of our truth. That then brings our frequency down all at once. And the real question is, are we being afraid of truly being seen? Because if that is the case, what makes us so afraid that someone else sees us completely? Is it rejection, for example? Because in this number one example, if you truly spoke from your authentic truth, from your heart, from purity, that simply cannot be oversharing. Because can there be too much authenticity? Can there be too much true you? No, there can simply be, in this specific case, a triggering of being seen, of really having that wound still present there. And in the second example, if it comes from a place where we speak before we have lived it, if it comes from a place before we have truly integrated ourselves fully, before it is fully processed, sharing and voicing it outwards first, before we have done it inwardly, yes, that can lead to a feeling of being unprotected. And because words have so much power, and voicing what we cannot hold ourselves yet, then can lead to co-creation. That can leave then the co-creation open with others, while we might not have fully intended to co-create with others, because we have not fully processed it ourselves yet. So then we can be influenced by others that then co-create with something that was meant to be integrated first fully within. And then, yes, it could be called oversharing, but it is rather a question of timing, of is it perhaps shared too early? It's still not fully oversharing, in my opinion. And then the third example would be the possibility in which we share to get a specific response, that we want to have agreement with someone, or that we have the feeling that someone else needs to tell us that we are okay. And in that specific situation, we might be a little bit attached to the outcome of the words that we are receiving. And even in this situation, I would still not fully call it oversharing, because it is simply placing our emotional safety outside of ourselves. So yeah, does oversharing then even really exist? Because if you Google into overshare, what really surprised me is that all of it leads back to the point of view that you have to be more private and that you need to protect your energy and share less. And while that completely makes sense for the second example, when you have not fully integrated yourself yet, because yes, you would want to protect it, you would want to make sure that you can stand fully in it yourself before anyone outside of yourself has the potential to co-create with you and to influence it. So yes, in that case, you might not want to share it. But in the first example, where you speak from your own full truth, fully authentic, I wouldn't apply the same advice, because in a way that is just asking people to go back into hiding while it already taps into a visibility wound. So it is just feeding the wound that way, to be silent and to not share. Because if it comes back then to being seen, if that is really the wound that is being triggered when we share before we fully feel ready to share, what can happen when someone fully sees us, fully and completely? Like, why does that for so many people trigger something? Because I think that is because then people can leave us. If someone sees us completely, they might reject us. If someone sees us completely, they might misunderstand us. Or if someone sees us completely, they might think that we are too much. Perhaps that is why we then feel ashamed. Not because we actually have shared too much, because for a very short moment we allowed someone to really see us behind the mask. For a short moment we put down our mask. And if I then really go deeper into that, because this is where astrology meets it, maybe in that moment, that feeling of shame, it's not that means that we should not have said it. Maybe that feeling of shame is actually revealing the exact place where our soul wants more freedom, where our soul actually wants to be seen more. Because shame, in a way, is pointing to places where we are still hiding. And I'm calling it shame, but the visibility wound can also really trigger other emotions. Shame is just, from my point of view, a very common one. And under this Gemini New Moon, the chart, what it really shows is that the soul needs a new beginning in expressing itself. There is the opportunity. Like, how does your soul wants to express itself? Where does your soul wants to plant seeds in how you are expressing your full, authentic truth? Because the soul really wants us to share fully and honestly through the voice, through really showing up, through being with others. Because under this new moon, that is what feels good. That is really the medicine under a sky like this. And those feelings of oversharing, of wanting to delete, of wanting to go back into a hiding space, of not wanting to show up again, that is not our soul speaking. That is just an unfinished pattern, consciousness that has not found completion yet, and that is showing up through our ego, that wants to protect us from feeling that way, because the ego doesn't want to feel rejection. The ego doesn't want to feel fear. It doesn't want to have this feeling of judgment. And that is also making a lot of sense, because that is exactly the job of our ego. It is here to protect us. And those feelings, they can feel so intense. They can really drill through us after having been so vulnerable. So obviously our ego wants to protect us from that. But if that is not our soul speaking, how do we then transmute it? And under this Gemini New Moon sky, when we look at the ruler for this lunation, to see what this new moon is really asking, is Mercury in Cancer, the sensitive one that feels everything through the emotional body. This Mercury is not afraid to feel. By feeling, that is the way information gets processed, through feeling it through the body. But the crab, like the Cancer, it has a very hard outside shell that wants to protect. Most of the sensitivity of it lives inside, that is not necessarily seen outwardly. And that is exactly where Jupiter, Mr. Making Things Bigger, is doing things anyway. And Saturn, Mr. Doing Things for the long run and doing it responsible, they are actually helping our mental body to filter through the emotional body and really ask the questions like, where is it time for me to speak up, to show my voice, to speak my truth? And how is that going to be healing for my emotional body? And how is that going to be healing for others? What is the medicine of my words? It's really the question of starting a new cycle, starting something new with more authenticity, regardless of how it is perceived. Having the courage with words as medicine. If words are frequency, and if words are spells, if they really create, which all of that I believe is true, then perhaps protection, maybe it's not coming from hiding, it's not coming from being silent. Maybe that protection is then coming from conscious creation. And we can do that very simply. Before we state anything, we can have small sentences like, may these words travel wherever they are meant to travel. May they serve in the highest good of all. And may this truth be protected. Those sentences are already creating that protection. We don't need to be in silence. We don't need to hide. It is not oversharing by stating our truth, by being authentically ourselves. And with that being said, the important dates throughout this new moon in Gemini cycle, these are in Central European time zone. This new moon happens early in the morning on June 15th. After the actual new moon has happened, we want to tune in with ourselves. And under this new moon, speaking our truth as medicine is where it will lead to our intentions. That can be through writing, a voice message, a note in your phone, anything that helps for you. Then June 21st is where we have the first square in Libra. That is where challenges may come up. And then following the full moon in Capricorn will be on the last day of June 30th. That is where illuminations, clarity will show up. And then the last quarter moon will be in Aries, and that will be on July 7th. And that is where we release. That is where we really step into the embodiment of whatever intentions we have set in the beginning of the cycle. That is just through the 28th day moon cycle. I always like to work on it on a larger scale as well, and that is why I mentioned the full moon in Gemini on December 8th. We work with these intentions also on larger scale. When we really look at manifestations, etc., it goes beyond just the cycle of the month, and it really goes into a larger 3-year-ish cycle. Now, before we are closing for today, I do want to share some excited news, because when Cancer season is starting, and I am a double Cancer myself, I'm a Cancer sun, Cancer rising, and that I believe is why my soul has aligned. That will be the exact day that I will start my first round of Gate 1 within the 13th temple. Actually, the day after, first day of Cancer season, June 22nd, which is a 4-week journey where we use our own birth chart to start seeing ourselves again from our soul self, instead of all the identities that we attached to in this lifetime and that we learned in this lifetime. We start in the first week with our elemental body, how we regenerate energy, where energy might still be leaking. We move on to what our soul is asking us to move through in this lifetime. In the 3rd week, we go into our own feminine wisdom. We all have intuitive gifts, and our feminine initiation story in our chart is really showing how we can step into that. The last week, we go beyond this lifetime. We look at past life patterns, how they are showing up in the chart. all before in gate 2, where we really go into the multidimensional soul memory. If this is exactly the direction where your soul is wanting to evolve in, I am inviting you to check out the information in the show notes below. But for now, let's connect to the seeds of this new moon, and let's just really connect back to the body. Because I always believe that it can be a lot of information, and the best way how we come back is to inner standing. So, under this new moon in Gemini, let's close our eyes and let's really connect back to our body. And if you are not in a position to close your eyes, just soften your gaze or just take another breath to calm down and to really feel your body and to really feel where all this information about the Gemini new moon is showing up for you. And with the next breath, think about where in your body it feels scary to fully be yourself, to fully tell your whole truth, to say all the words that are running in your mind, that go through your mind all the time, but that you are not expressing. And what is the main reason for that? Now imagine that as the sun and the moon are holding hands in the sky today, that on one hand you have the sun, your ego that wants to protect, that doesn't want you to feel any low vibrational feelings. And on the other hand, we have the moon, your soul, that wants you to be evolving on your soul's path. And now imagine that they are merging and that they both feel safe. And if you feel called, you can tell yourself, I am safe to show up exactly as I am. My truth is ready to be seen, to be heard, regardless of how it is perceived. I am not attached to any outcome. I am simply sharing my truth from within. Now take another deep breath. And with that, I want to thank you for listening, for tuning in, for being here. And I will see you in the next one under the full moon in Capricorn. Bye for now.